Hi friends, Krista here. Thank you so much for stopping by Books and Jams. I am here today to talk about the books that I read in the first half of the month of October. And I have 7 books and 1 DNF to tell you about today. I am not including in this video anything that I'm reading for the Catch-Up-A-Thon, Book of the Month Catch-Up-A-Thon, Readathon, that's happening from the 9th to the 22nd. So there should be a little bit more added to the stack, but I feel like 7 or 8 books is plenty enough to talk about for a video. I will do a separate wrap-up for Catch-Up-A-Thon and then a final wrap-up at the end of the month. So we'll have 3 wrap-ups, or recent reads we can call them, for the month of October. So let's just start with the book that I DNF'd. And that is True Biz by Sara Novick. I was very excited about this book because it takes place for the most part at a school for the deaf, a boarding school for the deaf. And at the beginning, I was very invested and interested learning about deaf kids who grew up in different types of homes. So like a deaf kid who grew up with deaf parents, and a deaf kid who grew up with hearing parents, and then a hearing kid who grew up with deaf parents. So we had a little bit of everything in there, and I thought that that was going to be super interesting. One of the deaf students had a cochlear implant, and her family did not want her learning to sign, but the implant didn't really work as intended, and so she kind of had a language deficit. There was just all of this aspect to deaf culture and deafness itself at the beginning that I was very interested in. And then in the middle, it kind of turned and became a little bit more of a teenage coming of age story. We're following some of these students at the school, and they're getting into drug use and having sexual encounters and all of these things. And I lost interest very quickly. When it changed focus, it changed tone. I had been reading this with a group of my patrons, and a couple of them finished before I did and said that they were very disappointed in it. And I just never really felt the urge to pick it up. So I just decided, after hearing that they ended the book feeling disappointed, and I was already starting to feel disappointed at the direction it was headed, I was like, nah, I'm done. So I made it, I don't know, 150 pages in. Exactly. I made it 150 pages in, and I just decided this is not going to be the book for me. So I'm DNFing that, and it is going in my unhaul pile. And then at the beginning of the month, I was still on this series kick. I had 3 books on my TBR for September that I just didn't get to during the month of September, and I still wanted to make progress in these series. So I picked up some of them. A Sparrow in Terezin by Christy Cambron is a Christian fiction, World War II based, dual timelines, and this follows the Butterfly and the Violin, which I've read a couple times and really loved. So I had high hopes for this kind of companion novel, and unfortunately it did not work for me at all. I never quite caught the gist of the storyline. I felt like it was very disjointed, very choppy. I was not drawn into the characters or what was happening to them, and I often was very confused. I wonder if I read it closer to when I read The Butterfly and the Violin, which has been over a year since I've read it, maybe closer to 2 years since I last read it. Maybe I didn't remember enough. I didn't even remember which characters were from that first story. And there was no real, that I could tell, wrap up of that one, or like tie in. It didn't tie in well, in my opinion. And that might just be because it was too far distant. There was one aspect of this that I did like. There was a young girl named Kaya who was, her family was half Jewish. She lived in Nazi occupied Prague in 1939, and she was kind of forced to leave her family and go to England. But while in England, learned more and more and more about what was happening in Prague, and went back to kind of save and rescue her family, and ended up going to a concentration camp with her family. So I did enjoy Kaya's story, which is why it got 2 stars instead of 1. But overall, this book was a bit of a miss for me. So I was a little bit bummed. I will keep The Butterfly and the Violin on my shelves because I really like it, and it stands alone enough that I don't need this one in the duology. So this one is also going in my unhaul pile, sadly. The next series book that I grabbed was the audiobook for The Long Way Home, which is book 10 in the Armand Gamache mystery series by Louise Penny. It's been over a year since I've read this series as well. I love Armand Gamache and his detective skills. I love Three Pines and the quirky and lovable people that are in Three Pines. And so it was nice to be back with these characters that I have grown to love over the course of 10 now books. But I will say that this is my least favorite so far. I gave it 3 stars, and usually I give them 4 or 5 stars. This one was just a 3-star read for me. The mystery in this one involves Clara and Peter, and I don't want to tell too much of their story because it does kind of develop over the previous books, but both Clara and Peter are artists, and they're married, a married couple, and their marriage is a little fraught, and there's something that happens in here. And so Armand works very closely with Clara, and the direction that this goes at the end was a surprise to me. I was not at all ready for that kind of plot twist, but I do love the mystery. I love Armand Gamache. I love the people in the town and how quirky and lovable they are. And I'm glad to continue on with this series, but I know that I have heard that it does change, I think after book 9, and I can tell that from this one. So I'm very curious about 11. Is it going to get back to being a series that I absolutely love, or is it going to stay along the lines of this one? I don't know. I am a little wary, but I will continue the series. It'll just take me forever, and that's okay. But that was a long way home. This is staying on my shelves because I want to have the whole series, but it wasn't my favorite so far. The last carryover for my September TBR was the next in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. This is Unlocked. This is by Shannon Messenger, and this is 8.5 in the series. This is very, very, very different from the rest of the series. And I'm not claiming that I read this whole thing, honestly. Up until this point, this is all extra stuff about the world. There are pictures. There's like a discipline record from Foxfire, which is the school that these kids go to. There are records that the council has on each of the different people. There's a healing center log. There's like a breakdown of the different characters and the council members and just all kinds of different things in the front part, recipes even, like there's just all kinds of different things. And I honestly did not read most of this. I will possibly at some point kind of dip into it and take a look at more of it. I started and I got up to page 22 and I'm like, this is just a recap of everything that has happened in the other books. And I didn't want to spend my time on that. But then at the end here is a novella, which we do get from not just Sophie's perspective, but from Keith's perspective as well, which was very cool because for the rest of the series, we are just in Sophie's mind. And so to get the perspective of somebody else, one of this group of friends, was very, very interesting to see kind of what he was thinking about everything that was going on. And I really enjoyed this little novella that's at the end of here. I'm very much looking forward to book 9, which comes out in November next month. I'm on the little hold list of the library because I don't want it in hardcover. I have to wait till it comes out in paperback to purchase it. But hopefully I'm close to the front of the hold list. I guess we'll see once it comes out. But read that, sort of. And next I picked up a book that's on my NetGalley. This is a book I've had checked out from the library, and this is a middle grade by Karina Yan Glaser, who wrote the Vanderbeekers series, which I absolutely love. This is called A Duet for Home, and this was wonderful. I gave this book 4 stars. At the beginning of this book, June and her little sister and mom are kind of kicked out of their home. Her dad died about a year ago or a couple months ago. I don't remember how long ago. And the mom shut down completely, stopped talking, stopped taking care of the girls, totally shut down in the midst of her grief. And they are kicked out of their home and they're forced to go to a homeless shelter for families, Huey House. So we just follow June as she moves into Huey House, and there are other kids who live in Huey House as well that they become friends with, that June becomes friends with in particular. June also is a wonderful viola player and is very worried about her viola getting taken away. And Tyrell is one of the boys that she meets at Huey House. Tyrell and Jeremiah have lived there for quite a long time. Tyrell loves to listen at 8 p.m. every day. The next door neighbor plays classical music on her violin, and Tyrell finds the best spot to listen every day. And so music becomes a big part of this story. But Tyrell and June kind of overhear that there are some changes happening that the mayor and council members or whatever are implementing, and they're trying to rush people out of the shelters and get them into approved housing rather quickly. And Tyrell and June are not thrilled about this plan, and they start writing letters to their mayor and to Congress, like different people, trying to get someone to talk to them about how this change in policy would affect actual families that are living in Huey House and other homeless shelters. I loved this look at homelessness from the perspective of these kids who are experiencing it firsthand. I loved seeing the differences in the adults who work at this different home. Like some of them were just in it for the money and the incentives, while others truly cared about these families and were working to get them the support and assistance that they needed, whether that's job training or counseling or all kinds of different things that are needed when you're at that state, at that place in life. I loved the impact of music on these kids and on the story itself, and how it helped June to have confidence. I just really loved this book very much. I gave it 4 stars, and it's another NetGalley book that is now off of my list. So yay for that. It was a winner in my book. And then I picked up Shady Hollow by Juno Black. I am so glad that I finally got to read this book. This was one of my patron picks earlier in the summer, and I had waited on the holds list at the library for a really long time and eventually just ended up buying the book when I was in Wisconsin a couple weeks ago. And I absolutely loved this mystery. So this is a murder mystery, but it definitely feels very cozy because all of the characters in this book are woodland creatures, and it takes place in the town of Shady Hollow, where everybody is a woodland creature. So we have owls and a raven and a moose and mice and chipmunks and a fox and all of these different types of woodland creatures. And I found this, especially at the beginning, as you're getting to know all of the different people in town, or animals in town, I should say. Juno Black is actually a writing duo, Sharon and Jocelyn. I don't know their last names, but they were so clever in the names of the characters and the characteristics, and matching kind of the stereotypical things that you think of a fox, like sly and cunning and quick, and then an owl as being wise. And in this book, the owl is an old professor who's a little bit pretentious, and his name sounds a little pretentious. And then the cops are these big grizzly bears who are a little bit dopey. Orville and I forget the other one's name, but it just was really clever in the naming and the characteristics that each of these animals had. In the midst of the story, an old cranky frog dies right away, and then the owner of the mill dies a little bit later on, and they're trying to figure out if these 2 deaths are connected. Nothing like this has ever happened in Shady Hollow before. Who is responsible? What has happened? It just was so much fun. It felt very cozy. I was definitely trying to write when things sounded like a clue to me. I stopped about halfway through. I just got so invested in the story that I didn't do that anymore. But towards the beginning, I'm like, this feels like it could be a clue. And I was marking those pages, which was really fun. I gave this 4 stars. I'm thrilled that there are more in this series because I'm not ready to be done with these characters. And I think that this was so much fun. So thank you, Shannon, for recommending this book. I'm so glad I finally got to it. Who would have thought? Someone who doesn't love animals loving a book, a murder mystery where all of the characters are animals. It was lovely. It was so good. And then finally, I have 2 picture books that I read this month. I mentioned in my last haul that when I came back from Wisconsin, I got online and ordered 5 of the 6 Newberries that were left on my list. And one of them was Last Stop on Market Street. And I was shocked that it was a picture book. Ooh, I just whacked myself. I was kind of shocked that it was a picture book, but this is by Matt De La Peña, and I thought it was lovely. I gave it 4 stars. It's about this little boy and his grandmother making their way after church onto this bus and they're headed all the way through town and they meet different people and it rains and they're on the bus and the grandma just teaches him about community and the people around you and the beauty and the magic of people around you. And then they end up at the last stop on Market Street and it's just an opportunity for them to give back to their community. And I loved the grandmother in here. I loved the lessons in this book, and it's so short, but it was really just a lovely little story. So I'm surprised that it won a Newbery because I don't remember like what age John Newbery Awards start at, but I thought it was poignant and beautiful. So I enjoyed reading it. And then this book was gifted to me from Pam, and it was mentioned in the virtual reading retreat that I did a couple months ago with the besties, Sarah, Amanda, and Lindsay. This is This is The Library by Sarah Stewart, and the pictures are by David Small. And it's just about this woman who loves books and reading, and throughout her life could always, like, she just kind of entered the world, dropped right down into a basket and started reading right away, always having a book in front of her. And her whole life is spent gathering and collecting books. When she goes to college, she breaks her bed with how many books she brings, and she gets in trouble in class because she's always got a book that she's reading, and she loves her library. It's a picture book for lovers of books, and I am a lover of books, and I loved this picture book. I mean, she almost becomes a little hoarder with the books, but then where it turns at the end of her life is just really lovely, and I absolutely love this book. So thank you, Pam, for giving it to me. It will live on my shelves forever. So here are the 8 books that I have recently read at the beginning of October. I would love to chat with you. Have you read any of these? Or are you all about the like creepy, spooky reads in October? I clearly am not because none of these fit that bill. But I am thrilled with the month so far. It's been a great reading month. So I'd love to chat with you about these books or about anything else. What has been one of your favorite reads so far this month? What are you working on right now, currently reading? I am in the midst of all my Book of the Month books right now. I'm currently in the middle of 3 Book of the Month books for Catch-Up-A-Thon, making great progress. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you spending time with me. As always, it means so much to me, and I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.